So we've established that you don't need a $2,000 camera to do this. You don't need any kind of vlogging camera to do this stuff. Just the phone in your pocket's great. So what are some tips to make your iPhone or smartphone videos as best as they can be? If I keep saying iPhone, it's because I'm using iPhones, but obviously these tips work for Androids or whatever smartphone that you have. So number one is you want to film in the highest resolution as possible, meaning either 1080 or 4K. The difference between the two is when someone's watching it at the end of the day, like on YouTube, on your website, they're not going to be able to tell that much of a difference. There is a little better quality in 4K. It's a little bit smoother, the light response is a little bit better, but the main purpose for 4K versus 1080 is going to be in the editing room. So when I'm editing, if I have 4K footage, let's say you're talking just like this to the camera and you have an especially, important point you have to make about something. I could punch in like this and I don't lose very much quality in the image, even though I just cropped in on you. So it can make certain things that you say more powerful. If you're using 1080p, I can't really do that because you lose quality when I punch in like that. Now, the downside to this is that when you're doing 4K, it's going to take up a lot more storage on your camera or on your hard drive or whatever it is that you're doing. It's a lot bigger file, so you're going to have more problems as far as transferring it off of your phone. The way that we're going to do that when you're working with us is we're going to suggest that you physically plug your phone in and plug it into your computer, and then you offload it onto Google Drive or Dropbox. We use Google Drive. If you already have a Dropbox, that's fine. You can invite us to it, but you could upload these to Google Drive and then we'll download it on our end. But that's really the only way you can do it because the file's so large. You can't email it, you can't airdrop it, none of that. But other than that, I choose 4K most of the time. If you don't have a whole lot of storage in your phone, 1080p is fine. So the next thing is going to be framing. This is pretty important just to keep in mind. It's not a hard rule, but it's something that will make your videos better. The rule of thirds. So some apps have this now, some cameras even have it now, where you could click on it. It's usually just called grid in your photos, or in your camera, I mean. And it brings up this grid formation here and it shows you how to frame things. So you want things that are important, meaning the center of your body, your eyes, generally to be along one of those lines. So for example, with the image right here, you'll see that my face is going to be across one of the top line here. And I'm relatively centered in the middle of it. And that's really all that it helps you do, is make sure things are framed neatly, because if it's like this, it looks a little awkward, or if I'm down here, I might have like too much headroom. You don't really want to cut off someone's head or your head when you're talking to the camera. That's not a hard and fast rule. You don't have to go back and re-record everything you've done if you did that, but it just makes things look more pleasing to the eye. The second thing to keep in mind when you're videoing yourself like this is going to be that you want to make sure that you're looking into the eye of the camera and not looking at the screen itself. At least most of the time. It's okay if you momentarily glance over there just to make sure everything's fine and nothing's going around in the background, you're all lined up the way you want to be, especially if you're moving around, you're not static like this is. But for the most part, keep in mind that you should be looking right in the eye of the camera, because otherwise it's distracting. You're not connecting with your viewers. So next up is lighting. This is probably the most important thing when it comes to the video side of this. Like I said, with the audio side, the most important thing was making sure the mic is as close as you can be to the subject. With the video side of it, it's definitely going to be lighting. And it's simple choices you can make. Terrible lighting can ruin it all. I know a lot of the times there might be something behind you that's pretty, or you might be on a balcony and you want people to see the ocean behind you as you're filming. You always want to make sure you're facing your light source. So for example, right here, right now, I am facing my back to windows right now, and that's giving me a nice soft light on me. I took a few minutes, not a few minutes, I took probably a minute before we actually started shooting this video to get the distance right between me and the window, because if you're too close to a window, it'll wash you out. You'll see, you lose a lot of detail. You'll know it when you see it. Just keep backing up a little bit until you find that happy area that you like. The worst thing you can do when you're filming yourself is backlight yourself, which is what I was talking about when I was talking about the trying to get something pretty behind you, but maybe you're in a hotel room and it's all dark in front of you. Don't backlight yourself. You lose all detail in one or the other, either what's in the background or what's in the foreground. And this goes for anything, whether your light source is the sun, whether your light source is, you know, a big LED light in front of you. Make sure you're facing your light source and just look at the monitor, you know, that you have here, and just kind of back away appropriately. After the light source, the other thing that kills a lot of people and makes their videos look really amateurish is going to be having some depth in it. Now, when you're using a phone like this, you can't really have a whole lot of depth of field. Some apps will let you do it artificially, but for the most part, you have what you have. Me right here, I'm about as in focus as that lamp right there, or that the plant right there. I'm a little bit sharper, but there's no, you know, blur like you see sometimes if someone's using one of these cameras or a professional movie camera. That's called bokeh or bokeh. You can pronounce it both ways, but it's the blur of the background. Always try to make sure that your videos have some sort of depth in them. Because otherwise, let's say if I film this just up against a wall, it would look extremely flat and just amateurish, and just don't do it. Try to pull together what you have in your area and set up the framing based on what can give you the most depth and the prettiest image. An image that has depth to it is a lot prettier than one that doesn't.